Hello, studio teacher friends, and welcome to episode number 122 of the Beyond Measure podcast. My name is Christina Whitlock, and I host this little operation, counting myself as your anytime piano teacher friend. That just means that you can count on me to be waiting right here for you anytime that you need a friend who understands this business. Today, I wanted to have a conversation with you about tuition rates. Oh yes, I am going there because I want to talk about what I consider to be a very important factor in determining how much you charge. Now, before you tune me out because you think you've heard it all already, I will say this is one reason that I almost never hear discussed among other teachers. Are you curious for more? Well, you're in the right place. Psst, real quick, before we get started. If you happen to be catching this episode when it launches, I wanted to let you know about a series of Zoom calls that I am hosting on Tuesday, April 18th. I wanted to host a few mini sessions based on a presentation that I gave at MTNA this spring. It was called Busy Teens, Should They Stay or Should They Go? Now, I know most of you reach at least a few points during the school year where you want to rip your hair out over busy teenagers. So it seems like a conversation worth having, right? My goal in these quick 30-minute little Zoom calls is to offer you some insight and some encouragement when it comes to managing expectations for busy teens, as well as the secret to knowing if lessons are even the best idea for them at all. I'm going to share some resources that I have to help you dig deeper, and in general, I think we're just going to have a really good time. So, on Tuesday, April 18th, I am hosting 3 free Zoom calls. One will be at 11 a.m., one at 2:30 p.m., and one at 8:30 p.m., and all of those are listed in Eastern Time here in the U.S. 11 a.m., 2:30 p.m., and 8:30 p.m. That means for some of you outside the U.S., that last call could actually end up being on Wednesday morning for you. But anyway, if you are on my mailing list, you will have already received an email with the registration links. But if you are not on the email list, you can find the registration link in my show notes for this episode, or you can head directly to christinawhitlock.com/busyteenszoom. I would love to interact with you there on Tuesday. Okay, let's get back to the topic at hand for today, tuition rationale. If you are in the throes of deciding what your lesson tuition is going to look like in the next year, you are not alone. Many of us have begun that process of deciding how much we want to charge for our instruction next year. In fact, as business owners, it's important that all of us take some time in the coming months to consider our fees and decide what, if any, revisions need to happen. And as you consider revisions to your tuition structures, I just want to offer one suggestion that I don't feel like I hear very often. Now, before we go there, look, I know that many of us feel cringy when we think about raising our tuition rates. There is a lot of emotion behind the task of putting a monetary value on your own services. I get it. By and large, we are a very compassionate profession. We care about these students and their families, and we do not want lessons to feel like a hardship for them. I know we have fears over losing students, over price increases, and I just want you to know that I understand all the feelings. I mean, trust me, I really do. And I have addressed a lot of those fears in my episode called Money Talk. That's episode number 37. And I also addressed similar themes in episode 87, which is titled Valuing Your Time. So, if money questions are top of mind for you right now, after you finish today's episode, I would strongly recommend going back and listening to episodes 37 and 87. Those will be linked in the show notes for this episode. Back to today, though, I want to address those of you who are prone to feeling guilty for charging more than you initially think that you should. Now, I wish that none of us felt guilty or selfish or whatever it may be when it comes to setting tuition rates. But if that happens to describe you, well, listen up because this is really important, okay? One of the primary reasons that you should be charging more for your tuition is so you have the resources to be generous in turn to your community. I'm going to say that again. You should be charging more for your tuition so that you have the resources to go and be generous to your community. Because I know that making a positive impact on your community is something that matters to a lot of us. I know that's a huge part of what draws us into teaching, the idea of making the world a better place, right? So if you struggle with feeling as though raising your tuition rates is a selfish desire, I want you to realize that it doesn't even have to be all about you. And that generosity to community can show up in lots of ways. For example, maybe you charge enough for your standard tuition that you can afford to teach a student or two on scholarship. Maybe you charge enough for your standard tuition that you can afford to take a day or two and go into the elementary schools to volunteer in their music program. Maybe you charge enough for standard tuition so that you can afford to go do whatever kinds of good work you want to do in the world. Look, friends, so many of us are guilty of saying, oh, if I just had the time, I would totally do X, Y, or Z. But I am calling our bluff today. Some of us, myself included, act like this work is so confining when really we're the ones defining those constraints. I've got a whole episode brewing on this topic itself, so I'll cool my jets on that for now, but it is so true. If you are self-employed and you call the shots, it's time to stop blaming the work for your inability to live the way you want to live, and it's time to start figuring it out. So, if you have a calling on your heart to teach a student on scholarship, whether that be through the Music Link Foundation or whatever it might be, stop telling yourself that you can't afford to teach students on scholarship and start looking at what you're charging otherwise to see if you could indeed begin to cover it. I feel like I have to give a lot of credit to the fabulous Wendy Stevens because she's the one who planted this seed in my head through her business webinar many years ago. I think we all realize the importance of sitting down with our budgets and figuring out how much we need to charge for our lessons so that we can cover our expenses, right? Well, maybe it's also time that you start factoring in what you need to make in order to go out and do the things that you want to do to make this world a better place. Do you have a local organization that you'd really like to support financially? run some quick numbers and decide, like, okay, if I wanted to donate $500 to their cause this year, how much would I have to raise tuition this year? The result might be feasible and it might not be, but there is zero harm to come from just doing a little math, right? Maybe you've always wanted to volunteer for something that takes place on Thursday evenings, but you think, I have to teach on Thursday evenings. Well, maybe you do, but maybe there's also a possibility that you could raise tuition enough to cover your Thursday evening lessons, and that would free you up to go serve your community in the way you want to. Look, I'm just trying to get your wheels turning today, friends. Maybe you don't care about community impact at all in this season of your life. Maybe it's just all about the kind of contributor that you need to be to your family right here in this moment. That's fine too. Whatever the case may be, I just want to remind you that you don't need to feel trapped by your own rules. If you are feeling the desire to help somewhere, just take 10 minutes and see what solutions you might be able to dream up. Okay? Just never be afraid to think outside that proverbial box that people are always talking about, okay? I have one quick aside about raising tuition, okay? So just bear with me here. I hear from so many teachers lately who are afraid to raise tuition right now because of the economy. And I get it. And truly, you do have to know your market because these things are not one size fits all matters. But take this very seriously, okay? I do not think there has ever been a more justified time to raise your tuition. And by that, I just mean that you should not have to utter a single word as to why you are raising tuition. It's obvious to anyone living in our world today that things have become more expensive. When the cost of pretty much every single item and every single service we know has increased this past year, there is no reason that the cost of your instruction should be exempt from that. Now, for those of you who are in financial positions where you don't need to raise tuition or whatever, again, you do what works for you. That's fine. But I just know there are many teachers listening who have not raised tuition for a long time, and they are really struggling with the idea of doing it this year, even though they really need to. I'm basically of the mindset that it makes more sense now than it ever has to raise your tuition rates for next year. Now, I will tell you that any change you make to policies or tuition run the risk of coming with some changes to your student roster. If you increase your rates, you need to know that some students may leave. If you change your policies in any way, some families may decide that you are not the right fit for them anymore. But at the end of the day, we have to make the decisions that are going to help us achieve the life that we want to live. One last thing today before we toast. If you are considering a change in your policy and you would like to have a trusted voice to troubleshoot your decisions with, that is why I offer one-to-one consultations. Clients consult with me for a variety of reasons, but this time of year, it's almost entirely based around changes to policy and tuition. If you have been considering moving to something like a no makeup policy, or making the leap into a flat tuition structure, or if you need help writing your communications to your studio families about these things, or whatever the case may be, I would love to work with you. I'll crunch numbers for you. I'll help you see other perspectives. I also happen to make a fantastic hype girl, meaning that I will make sure you feel comfortable and empowered to make the decisions that you want to make for your business. You can head to ChristinaWhitlock.com/consulting for more information, or contact me however else you would like, and I'll help you get set up. Okay, friends, I know that we all need a little extra encouragement when it comes to these business-related matters. So I think you have definitely earned a toast today. Here we go. Studio teacher friends from all around the world. Maybe you don't care about contributing to your community or freeing up time or resources to make a difference around you right now. I am not here to fault you for that. But for those of you who do have that desire in your hearts, this episode was for you. I hope that you can feel that faint excitement of possibility coursing through your veins as you begin to wonder what you can do with your tuition structures that will allow you to step up and step out in your community. I think it just helps to recognize that, yeah, we want ourselves to benefit from what we charge. I mean, of course we do. This is our job, and money is part of the point. But if you struggle with feelings of guilt or selfishness or whatever it is when it comes to raising your prices, I hope it might be of some help to recognize that these increases can also help others outside of your immediate circle. So, I raise my glass to the thrill of possibility and to the hope of making our communities brighter and more equitable places. Here. All right, friends, that's basically it for episode 122 of the Beyond Measure podcast. Thank you for listening today, and please don't forget to come hang out with me on Zoom this Tuesday, April 18th, if you can. Sign up at the link in the show notes or send me an email at beyondmeasurepodcast@gmail.com. I really want to thank you for being the absolute best crew of online teacher friends that a girl could ever ask for. Onward and upward toward making the world a better place through our generosity.